Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super Fantify. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Timeless. So I was very curious to see how things will work out when Lucy was with Flynn. I thought it was going to be a situation where Flynn was like, "Oh, I'm going to take you back to this specific point in time to basically show you how things run out, but things have worked out because you wouldn't let me kill John." So I was like, now I got to show you the ramifications for that. But it's like, no, basically took him back to the main base, and he's basically been jumping around time trying to see has anything changed. And it's like, nope, his wife and child are still dead. Rittenhouse still lives because she let John live. But she's like, who's to say it's because I let John live? I wasn't going to let you kill a kid. And the fact is, his dad had tons of other followers who could have kept it going, because his father said to himself, "Is like, the fact is, you think killing me will stop this? It won't." There are other people that believed that could have easily have carried it on. But obviously, you can't completely discount the possibility that John is the main reason why Rittenhouse exists today. Something that kind of crossed my mind now is I've kind of thought about it, because obviously this whole time travel thing and Rittenhouse as being as powerful as they are, what if Rittenhouse somehow did get access to technology? What if somehow what if maybe the old guy, maybe the old guy that's Rittenhouse, that's that's Lucy's dad, what if that's actually John? What if Lucy is a direct descendant of Rittenhouse? Because that we still don't know who that old dude is, because even Rufus just refers to him as old Rittenhouse dude. So what if that's actually John, that somehow he got time travel? I don't know. Maybe he got access to time travel or something like that. I know I'm just kind of throwing wild thoughts and crap out there, but it's maybe some shape or form, maybe he did, and maybe he was from originally those times, but somehow he got to present day or something, and maybe someone from present day ended up time traveling. Maybe it's a situation where him from present day time traveled to the past to give his younger self access to the time travel, to be at different points in time to influence Rittenhouse or something like that. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. Like I said, obviously, Lucy's deep into this whole Rittenhouse thing because of her dad and everything. So maybe that's who that person is. Maybe it's not. Maybe she's actually a descendant of John Rittenhouse too. So maybe killing John would have actually meant killing Lucy. Just thought about that. So it probably would have been, it's probably in her favor not to have killed him, or let him get killed. So basically now Flynn's got in his, since I couldn't cut the head off the Hydra, now I guess I guess I would have to work my way down the list. I'm just gonna have to kill, kill the head of Rittenhouse, destroy Rittenhouse all across time. But I guess because you kind of ruined that for me, and now I don't have another opportunity, because he's too well hidden. And the fact of the matter is, you can't find him in the history books because he's probably changed his name and everything because someone's trying to kill him. So what we're going to do is we're going to work our way down the list and just kill every member of Rittenhouse one by one until we make the whole thing topple. So the person they're aiming for in this one in particular was Henry Ford and Edison, because they're big time Rittenhouse people. We don't know exactly what they were doing for Rittenhouse, in this episode. It was never really brought up. They had that meeting, but what that really entailed, I don't know. Maybe it was maybe they were working on some stuff for Rittenhouse. We don't know, because that was never really discussed. It was the whole point was just to go after them. So they're dealing with that while Wyatt and Rufus are trying to track down Lucy. But then Rufus comes back with the recorder, and Mason listens to us "Oh man, this is bad. This was your last chance." He's like, "Well, yeah, we kind of had to scrap the recording because it's not like we want Rittenhouse to know that we killed their founder." It's like, wait, what? Well, we didn't technically do it. Flynn did it, but we kind of helped. It's like, oh God, Rufus, this monumental, you monumentally screwed up. It's bad enough with the recording. Now you're telling me, okay, I'm gonna get you out of town. Obviously, I'm gonna get your family out of town too, so you all can be saved. And it's like, no, I'm not running. He's like, what? It's like, no. He's standing his ground. He's like, no, I'm not running. Not until we get Lucy. But I'm like, yeah, you go, Rufus. But at the same time, it's Rittenhouse is as old and as powerful as they are. Running is not going to do anything. They could track him down, so it makes matters worse. So with at least where they are now, I feel like there's at least some safety. So go with Agent Christopher around, especially because she knows about everything too. So But essentially, they go back to was it like 1893, where Lucy fangirls upon meeting Harry Houdini. She's like, "Oh man, you're so cool," because it's like who like essentially Flynn, being the dick that he is, essentially tricked Wyatt and Rufus to wander into a hotel that's basically like this dude who runs that hotel is basically the first, like, I guess, well-known serial killer, because it's like it's because of him that the term serial killer kind of existed. Well, not necessarily him, but he's like one of the first earliest reported serial killers. So it's kind of like, whoa, he's a big deal. That basically he locks people up and torture them. He's got booby traps all over the hotel. If she doesn't help him and is like to get like basically the room they would need to get into for the meeting is locked up tight. So it's like he needs to find a way to sneak in there, and it's like you have Lucy being like, well, there's only one person, and she calls upon Houdini, and it's like when she's being on stage with Houdini, like being his assistant and everything, she's having so much fun, and she looks out to Flynn in the crowd watching, and she kind of straightens herself up and like, no, I should be having fun. This is a serious situation. I've been kidnapped. But it's like you see her kind of break multiple times, and I really thought that was kind of interesting because that the historian side of her just she can't help it. She's like, dude, you're like so cool. I'm meeting Harry Houdini, the one and only, the great Harry Houdini. It's like enough to make you excited, but at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, I keep forgetting my circumstances, which, Harry gets kind of roped into it, which he's pretty good at breaking locks. Well, unlocking locks. And I like that. Like, it really shows you just how, I mean, granted, you see him get inside that box and have it locked and everything. It's like, it kind of should have known he was very flexible, but he just kind of bounced off that wall, grabbed up there. Like, basically, it was almost like a vent of some sort that basically he crawled through, like he slid himself up there and then crawled through, fell on the other side and unlocked the door. I'm like, man, he's very flexible, but with the whole magician act and like I said, being inside that box like that, obviously you gotta be pretty flexible to handle something like that, to kind of contort your body in the right way, to be able to get free and everything. Magician never reveals their secrets and stuff like that. But it's like, dude, he was pretty impressive. And then that thing he did really quickly, in the blink of an eye, took Flynn's gun, handcuffed him, and then took the bomb off of him. And he's like, gentlemen, like the fact is, yeah, I just saved your lives. Also remember, the person who saved your life was none other than the great Harry Houdini. I'm like, shut up, self-promoting yourself like that. He's like, come, watch the show, everyone, when you get the chance. And then bounces. And I love it. Kind of coinciding with the whole murder house, hotel situation. That George twist. I don't know what it was. There was just something off about George. I was like, don't tell me, like, it's like, George, you're actually the killer, right? That's what this is about. But then you kept seeing the guy with the keys walking around. I'm like, oh, maybe it's him. Maybe I'm just being too pessimistic. It's like, no, I should have went with my guts. It's like, I knew not to trust him, because that's like some killer level stuff, is to hide in plain sight. I've watched enough stuff with killers that done stuff like that, like hidden himself in plain sight. And he has a twisted motive for doing it too. He's like, oh, the reason why he did it was because he wanted to be there to see their fear in person, like the fear of not being able to get out. Especially like there's a girl, Sophie. She was scared because she's like, oh, she'll never get to see her dad again, because under the circumstances that she would die, like no one would know what happened to her. So it'd just be like, oh, she just vanished and disappeared. And it's just like, man, you even had George talking about his son and everything. And it's just like, oh. I do love that conversation between Sophie and Rufus. And Rufus is like, oh, you went to MIT? She's like, yeah. He's like, oh, yeah, me too. She's like, oh, you're so and such. And then Rufus is like, no, I'm the other black guy. They even bring the conversation up later, and she's just kind of like, oh, yeah, I guess we'll bump into each other, at the reunion or something. He's like, hey, yeah, sure. I love it. But if he's an architect, that means a lot back then too. Like, it's like, I'm surprised she was able to get into such a position. I mean, granted, I don't know 100% of like, but I mean, it's like women, obviously, even to this day, standards don't really have the most, latitude with a lot of stuff like that. It's like they still have to struggle with things like that, like getting respect in the workplace, to be like, oh, a woman can do a job just as good as a guy can. And it's like, but especially back then, I was like, to be able to be an architect, would they even let you do something? Because I would assume they'd be like, oh no, this ain't women's work, this is men's work. But so it's like, that's quite surprising. it's kind of something that actually helped Lucy in this episode. And I really liked it. Is what Houdini says. Like the reason why he can do what he can, because fear isn't real. That basically fear is just a reaction. Fear is like this feeling, and it's like your body kind of reacts to it. It's like not a real thing. It's just a reaction from your body. And so that's why he's able to do what he does, because he focuses his mind on one thing. He doesn't focus on this reaction from his body called fear. He focuses on just one thing, escape. And that kind of helps Lucy later on when she gets caught by, George, but I forgot his real name. But nevertheless, he's got her locked up, and Lucy has a thing for tight spaces, and then she's just kind of thinking about trying to escape, and then basically she does that good thing where she kind of gets inside of his head. She basically uses her knowledge of him. It's like, it's like, oh yeah, I know this stuff about you. No, the fact is that your dad beats you. That basically every woman that you've ever fallen in love with, you've even had children with some women, but you abandoned that family to be with another woman. It's like every woman you've ever fell in love with, you've murdered them and everything, and it's just kind of like running through his life. She's like, oh, I'm psychic. I know your past, but I also know your future. It's like, oh, I can help you, just buying time until Wyatt and Rufus can show up. And then he comes down to it, and he's like, okay, you got me. He's like, the fact of the matter is, we had that conversation, right, Wyatt, where you talked about the fact is that, not knowing what happened to someone is the worst thing that could possibly happen. Like, she's like, oh, you're talking, the way you were talking about it, it's like, from personal experience, with this whole wife situation. But then it was kind of like, he's like, okay, so I'm going to turn myself in, and then I'm going to talk to the police. I'm going to tell them where, give those families closure. It's the right thing to do because I've been caught. To me, I was thinking like, I was thinking like his main reason for doing that would be for the enjoyment of being like, oh yeah, to show you, yeah, this is what I did to your daughter or child or whatever, like your daughter or son, I put them here. I did this to them, just to kind of see the sadness in their faces, knowing what happened to them. But then Wyatt goes, he asks Lucy, he's like, so does he ever tell anyone anything? Lucy's reluctant to tell him the answer because she knows what he'll do. And he's like, Lucy, she's like, no, he never tells them the truth. It's all, he lies to them and basically writes a book or something about it and makes a profit off the whole situation. And he's like, oh, that's witchcraft. Don't believe her. And then he's about ready to do something. And that's when Wyatt puts him down. So Wyatt kind of waited to the moment he was about to do something. So, but granted, to be fair, because he was about to burn the place, but to be fair, Wyatt would have wanted to put him down anyway because he's a monster. And it's like, you have a situation to stop a very nasty person, a serial killer, and, make sure that there are no more victims. Those victims will never get justice, but it's like they never would have gotten justice in that case anyway. So it kind of sucks, but at the very least, they were able to save Sophie as well as any other future victims. So Houdini is one of those characters, like, they don't really back time, they don't go to any previous times, but Houdini is one of those characters I would love to see them, like, cross paths with some more, because I love them. I was like, I really like them. Like, it's hard to say which one I like more, the real James Bond or him. It's really hard to say. Spy or magician, either way, they're both cool, so that's why I'm kind of like, having such a tough time choosing. And then at the end, you had a situation where you have Rufus be like, you know what, Rittenhouse, oh dude, I'm gonna tell you like this. I'm not going to work for you anymore. I'm no longer under your thumb. What I am going to do is we're going to capture Flynn. We're going to do what we were here to do. We're going to stop him. But I want you to know that if you try and come after me or my family, my friends, the people I care about, I will be coming after you. It will basically be a world of hurt for you. And it's just like, it was so badass seeing Rufus like that, because, even Mason's like, are you sure about this, Rufus? There is no going back. And Rufus is like, after what I've been through, captured by a serial killer, it's like, Rittenhouse doesn't scare me, which is like, they're a lot scarier. Because it's not just one person, it's an entire organization screwing with time. So it's kind of like, well, not just screwing with time, more so than anything. Well, they are screwing with time in a sense. Because that's the thing, is you don't know how things are really supposed to work out in history, because Rittenhouse was there to influence it. Because they ended up getting a lot of influential people into them, like Benedict Arnold, Edison, Ford, or some pretty big, well-known names. So he ended up also saying something interesting too. He's like, so what you're going to need to do, I've chosen a side, Mason. Well, it's time for you to choose one too. And it's like, what side will Mason choose? Because he sees Rufus standing up and fighting and everything, which probably instills him with courage. But at the same time, he knows he's got probably a lot more experience with Rittenhouse than Rufus does, so he knows just how deadly they can be. So it's probably going to be a situation where Rufus thinks Mason might be on their side, but he secretly chose Rittenhouse side, so he's telling them. I don't know. I get the feeling that might be what they do, but hey, maybe they'll surprise me and make it so that Mason's like, no, no more, or maybe he plays Rittenhouse, make them think he's on their side when he's really on Rufus, Wyatt, and Lucy's side. So, and then at the very end of the episode, we got Flynn calling Wyatt to basically be like, oh yeah, so you helped me catch Benedict Arnold, so I'm gonna keep up my end of the bargain. You know, things didn't work out, but still, you did your side of things, so I'm gonna do mine. Oh, this is the name of the man who killed your wife. He's currently locked up for like 2 other murders or something like that. It's like, oh, so there's no way you're gonna get to him, but you could always, go to an earlier point in time, and get him. It's like, oh, I guess you could always kill like his grandfather or his father and make sure that he's never born, type of thing. Which, like I said, obviously storyline was going to pop up of like, but because I don't know, I feel like something's going to happen. Like, I don't, because so many things with that. It's like, why would Flynn do that? Why would Flynn give you the name? Like, it's like, it's the only leverage he really had over like Wyatt and them, something he could hold over them. So, I mean, obviously I get the feeling like Wyatt's probably going to look into it a little bit, because easily this could be a situation where Flynn is trying to get another name off the list. He's trying to get Wyatt and them to pull the trigger for him, because it's like, well, rather than, fighting against you guys, I'll trick you guys into helping me do it, essentially. Or maybe it is the guy who actually killed his wife, because it's like, I guess he feels like if he can get Wyatt to be in a position to kind of cross that line of, it's like, because he saw what he did with the whole, it's like, oh yeah, I know what you did with the whole serial killer situation. It's like, oh, don't you feel great that you killed him and everything? It's like, but that doesn't, it's like, oh, you helped with that, but let's not forget you didn't help with the whole Rittenhouse situation. That whole situation is still playing out when you had an opportunity when you could have helped me, or at the very least let me just kill John back then. So I'm very curious to see how that all plays out with his, like, that storyline, because I've constantly brought it up that I was like, oh, somehow, like, Wyatt's going to get to a position where, like, he's at that point in time when his wife dies, and I get the feeling like his wife's disappearance and everything has to do with him. That's what I'm feeling like, that basically somehow they go back to that exact point. It's like, you're not supposed to go back into your own timeline, but something happens, and that's where they end up. Maybe they get under attack, and the lifeboat ends up teleporting them to like that specific point in time. They didn't really know where they were, and then Wyatt gets out. It's like, oh, wait, I know exactly where we are, and it's blank, 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 and it's like, oh man, this is around the time my wife is still alive and everything. So maybe just maybe that'll kind of play out that way, or maybe it will legitimately be a situation like going back and just killing the guy's ancestor. I mean, no telling just where the show might take things. So overall, a very good episode. Cannot wait to see more. Very glad to have you back, Timeless. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.